Leave no doubt. Leave no doubt. I received an unusual letter this past week. It was from a dear friend in the faith who I'd known for years. And when I opened it up, I was a little surprised. The lettering on the envelope was a little scratchy, and obviously someone was stressed. You could tell that it was written sort of in a tough time just from the writing on the outside. And it started out, when I opened it up, it started out very quickly. It just simply said, "I have been poisoned by two of my nurses and my daughter, who after they poisoned me, burned down my house to the ground and everything in it." I don't know about you, but I usually get letters that start out with, "Dear Devin, how are you doing? It's so nice to see you. You know, I miss you. It's been a long time." But this one wasn't like that. And it reminded me a lot of James. We've been in the book of James now for quite a while, and I went back to the beginning of the book of James, and I noticed that James doesn't pull any punches either. He kind of just starts, bam! Here it is, folks. Like it or not, here it comes. Let's take a look and see what he says. This is from James 1. Let's read it together. "I, James, am a slave of God and the Master Jesus, writing to the 12 tribes scattered to the kingdom come. Hello. Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work, so you become mature and well-developed, not deficient in any way. If you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father. He loves to help. You'll get His help and won't be condescended to when you ask for it. Ask boldly, believingly, without a second thought. People who worry their prayers are like wind-whipped waves. Don't think you're going to get anything from the Master that way. Adrift at sea, keeping all your options open. When down and outers get a break, cheer. And when the arrogant rich are brought down to size, cheer. Prosperity is as short-lived as a wildflower, so don't ever count on it. You know that as soon as the sun rises, pouring down its scorching heat, the flower withers. Its petals wilt, and before you know it, that beautiful face is a barren stem. Well, that's a picture of the prosperous life. At the very moment everyone is looking on in admiration, it fades away to nothing. Anyone who meets a testing challenge head-on and manages to stick it out is mighty fortunate. For such persons loyally in love with God, the reward is life and more life. This is the Word of God for us. Now, I don't know about you, but I have to admit something. Life can get pretty crappy sometimes, folks. Yes, I said that in church. I'm sorry. Life gets pretty crappy sometimes. The question is not if it's going to get crappy. The question, as James puts it, is not if you're going to have challenges and tests. It's when you're going to have challenges and tests. When life is going to get really junky and down and out, when life is going to get tough, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? In the old days, monks used to actually sit in prayer, and they would pray to God for troubles to come upon them so that they could show their faith. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty dumb idea to me. I get enough troubles without praying for more. And I'm sure you do too. So that's kind of out. But what do we do? How is it all supposed to work, you know? Well, John 16 says, "I told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. Jesus tells us once again that presence is something that's the biggest gift. That circumstances may not always end up the way that we like them, and life is not always going to be rosy. You know, I remember the day I got married, and I got to thinking that on that day, life couldn't be more perfect. And I just wished it could stay that way for the rest of my life. You know, we loved being together. We loved touching each other. We loved just spending time, and even times in the car were special to me. You ever feel like that? Now, how many of you have been married over 10 years that still feel that way? Sometimes you have to work a little at it, though, don't you? It's really nice if you do. But life does kind of get in the way, and it sort of takes its toll on us, and we get into a routine where, you know, it's still a gift that you're together, and it's still a gift that marriage is what it is. But it changes. It forms differently over time, and we change. And as we change, the marriage changes. Things happen in us that change our lives almost sometimes imperceptibly. And then sometimes things hit us in our lives where we change almost in an instant. And we're left with a choice as to whether or not we're going to abandon the marriage because we've changed, or if we're just going to stick it out and make it work, figure out a way. You know, when I think about troubles and challenges, I've thought quite a bit about the church and how the church has been changed over time, how things have been different, and how things maybe have stayed the same in some ways. But the question always comes up not in whether or not there is change, but rather maybe in how we have processed it. For those of you that have been around a while, I'm not going to say anything that you don't already know. And for those of you that are fairly new, I want to just kind of bring you up to date on where it is Goshen really, where we are, you know, because I think sometimes it's good for us to tell the story of a church and to remind ourselves as to what we're truly about. We're 60 people strong here this morning. It's not a big number. But, you know, we can have a vital church with 60 people. But here's the thing. 4 years ago, Goshen, before I was even thought of being here, I was happy in a nice little podunk town down in Shelman Bluff. And somewhere along the line, God was moving in a place called Goshen, and we got an opportunity 4 years ago to start something called revitalization. They came in and they said, you know what, you have 50,000 cars driving by your church every week. And you have about 50 people here. That's a shame. There ought to be scads of people coming to Goshen, because Goshen is a good place. They've got great facilities and a nice piece of property that is perfect for a church. In fact, you know, when you look at us, we're almost pretty much the smallest church from here to the end of Rincon that's on Highway 21. So they made a decision, and a covenant was signed. This promise was signed with a part of the South Georgia Conference called NRCD, New and Revitalized Congregational Development. And they said, we'll give you a bunch of money. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to help you change, to help you become all you could be. Well, we took that. Didn't quite work out the way we thought it would. A couple of years later, we found out that we still had problems. And unfortunately, it led to a pastoral change, and I came along. God called Devin Schultz and his family to be part of something. And what I was told was that I was coming into a congregation that had said unanimously, we want to be a church different than we were 200 years ago. We want to grow. We want to be somebody different. will you go and help these people do this thing? And believe me, I prayed. I prayed and I thought about it. And even though I have devoted my life to the United Methodist Church and God through that church to go where I needed to go, I think I would have come anyway. We started out slow. We decided that we weren't going to just come in. I decided, let me put it that way, because I have to take responsibility for it. I decided I wasn't just going to come in and say, you know what, everything has changed today. First Sunday, we're not even going there. Maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. But we tried to stay a little traditional and move slowly into things to try and ease the pain. And you know what? The problems that we had before I came became the problems that we had now. We still have problems today. A lot of them are the same problems. A lot of them are different. A lot of them are maybe pointed directly at me. It's okay. What am I going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? When we're faced with tests and challenges and things that are insurmountable, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to deal with things? Because the thing is that a lot of times we have to watch what we pray for because we might get it. You know, I'm reminded every day when I look in my records that I'm a part of a movement that over 40 people sat in a little church just about 45 feet from here one night and said, we want this to happen. And we're going to get behind this and we're going to make it work. It was like Coach Yost standing on that line with his defensive team saying, leave no doubt in any particular way. Make sure that everyone in this community knows that the day we played on the fields of Effingham County are the day that people met Jesus Christ through the people of Goshen United Methodist Church. And do not let Satan gain another yard. When I meet you in the community, I don't care if you think I'm a great person. You know what I want you to know? I want you to know that you have stood before a man of God. I'm not perfect, nowhere near it. And I'm not Jesus Christ. But if I have my way, you'll walk away from me knowing that you have seen the face of God. Leave no doubt. Leave no doubt. What a chance for us, the people of Goshen, to finally take on when times are tough, when things don't look good, when things appear to be insurmountable, and when we believe that maybe something has gone awry, something has gone amiss, and somehow or another we've made a mistake and we need to turn around and backtrack. Sure, it's a year later. I'd love to have 150 people in worship. You know that? It's not happening right now. Is that defeat? Is that my own problems coming out? Is that my own lack of witness? Is that my own complaining? My own judgmentalism? Is that something that I've done? Something I haven't done? Or is it God teaching me something? Teaching you something? Fact is we are going to have problems. Satan will try us and faith will measure us. Let me say that again. Satan will try us, but faith will measure us. Folks, we can turn around and we can go back. You can get rid of me, that's fine. You know, I've got a place in God's kingdom, I promise you. But what will you do with another pastor? What will you do with another worship leader? What will you do differently than was here 5 years ago, 10 years ago? What will you do with the troubles that still exist today? Because I can assure you, your trouble is not with me. My trouble is with me. Your trouble is with you. We have to start with ourselves and wonder, how is God working? Because we are going to have problems. We had them before, we've got them now, we'll have them in the future. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. I'm going to still be the same person, and Lord help me, I hope that you feel the same way about yourself. I hope you feel so solid in your faith that you know that tomorrow you will be the same person of God that you hope to be today. Maybe even a little better. Not in spite of our problems, but because of our problems. Because of the things that challenge us. Nobody ever got better with the status quo. Nobody ever got better by the easy life. Today, this church faces a crucial and critical point. And I look at that video and I think, you know what? Petey could have stayed. Coach Yost said, we're not going to let him gain another yard. And he pointed at Petey and he said, Petey, we got a problem in your area. And Petey just said, you know what? To heck with you. But he could have stayed in. He could have sabotaged the whole defense. He could have said, you know what? I'm going to prove Coach Yost wrong. I'm going to make as much trouble as I can, and I'm going to make things so hard on them to win this game that they just figure it out. They figure out the truth that I know of. But Petey didn't stay. And Coach Yost didn't beg him to stay. That's the funny thing. It was one of his best players, folks. He was a star. And he said, if you want to be a star, give me a star effort. Be the person you say you are. And if you don't like it, fine, go. I'm not going to chase you. I'm not going to run after you. Because who's ever with the bus needs to be on the bus. But who's ever not with the bus needs to get off the bus. You see, God has this bus, this train, this way of the kingdom of God that is constantly growing. And He gave us but two simple commands. He said, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And because you do that, you love everyone enough to go and make disciples. Not go and go to church. Not go and check off your list. Not go and handle some tradition, but go and make disciples. And it doesn't matter how you do it. John and Charles Wesley figured out that they could do it with bar hymns, bar songs made into hymns. They didn't care as long as it brought people to Christ. Go. Go. Stop whining and complaining and go. Because it's not about you and it's not about me. It's about Him. There's a movie that I know of. I'm not sure I think it's called The Wedding Date. Anybody seen that? Seen that? Deborah Messing and some other guy, some other really foxy guy. Yeah, I can say that. He says in in an article that he gave, in an interview that he gave, he said that every woman has the exact relationship that she wants. Now, I had to think about that for a minute, as you probably are for a minute right now. She had trouble with that because she said, do you honestly believe that I want to be single? Do you honestly believe that I want every relationship to fall apart? Do you honestly believe that I create all that? And he said, yes. Because the day that you stop thinking that relationships are not going to work out, that you're never going to find the right guy, that you're never going to have a date, will be the day all of a sudden you have a date. And will be the time that you're finally freed up to have a fruitful and wonderful relationship. Well, you know what? I guess that hit me right here because when I was younger, a little over 20 years ago, I decided that I had given up on women. I was tired of the dating scene. I was tired of being hurt. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy myself a house and I'm going to live and I'm going to be happy and I'm going to get what I want and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. And 3 months later, I'm engaged to Susie. Wow. You know what? Goshen has the exact relationship with the kingdom of God that she desires. We do. Because the day that we stop worrying about things and stop trying to change things and stop trying to be different than what God is really doing and we start getting behind everything, will be the day that we start to grow. And people will see the grace of God in us. Not in spite of our challenges, but because of them. And it works in each and every one of our lives because tests and character kind of go together. If we fight every change that God puts in our life, we'll miss the blessing of learning God's lessons. We'll miss the blessing of God refining our character, of making us into people that we can never be without those problems. And the fact of the matter is that if we look in our life, and I'm going to say this, because I've been through it myself, but if you can look in the mirror, and if you see someone in the mirror that has resorted to ungodly or unchristlike behavior in order to get your way, I think it's time that you check your attitude. Because God will never have us act ungodly or unchristlike in order to put things back the way He wants them. The Israelites spent 70 years in Babylon after the destruction of Jerusalem. You know what? I can identify with every one of those pastors and priests that were there at the time that said, you know what? This could have been avoided. If we'd have just turned to God. Think of it. If we'd have just done this, if we'd have just not done that, if we'd have just stayed the way we were before, then, things would have been different and God would not have imposed this judgment on us. Oh, Lord, help me. But you know what? Babylon was supposed to happen. 40 years in the wilderness for the Israelites was supposed to happen. Jesus Christ going to the cross was supposed to happen. Sometimes our troubles are really just a matter of God's will being acted out in life. Let's face it, nobody plans for it. Peter didn't plan for it when Jesus went to the cross. In fact, he said, no, never. Not while I'm alive, Jesus. And Jesus turned to him, and you remember what he said? Satan, get behind me. You're in the way. Because stuff is going to happen different ways, different intensities. And we have got just but one single thing that we need to think about. How are we going to handle it? Saw a bumper sticker one day that said, on every life a little rain must fall. But this is ridiculous. Boy, it's hard sometimes. But when you're challenged, when you're tested, what's your reaction going to be? The truth is, folks, your leadership team is dealing with some things right now that you ought to know about. We are about $600 a week shy of being able to pay our bills. We are in real danger of the possibility of closing this church. We are in real danger of the possibility of, first, losing me as a pastor and having to bring on a retired pastor, someone who obviously makes far less money than me. What do we do? What do we do? How are we going to process this? We can fight it, flight it, lose it. But we need to know about it. We need to process it as to how we're going to deal with things. Because those tests and challenges right now are going to build the character upon which this church is built on tomorrow. It purifies our faith. John 23:10 said, He has tested me through the refining fire, and I have come out as pure as gold. You see, we're never the same when we go through challenges and we actually learn lessons from them. We will never be the same. I wanted all of our leadership team to be here so that you had an opportunity to know that if you want to talk to them afterwards, that's fine, and see if their resolve is what you believe it needs to be. I believe in these people. I believe in this church. Sometimes that's not easy. But I believe in God. And I think the lessons that I learned here will always bring me to a better place in my Christian walk. Someone once said Christians are like tea bags. You never really know what they're made of until you stick them in hot water. Well, folks, there are some folks around you, even this morning, that have been in hot water lately because of what we've been through. Do you see what people are made of? What do you see? Is it a godly example? Is it perseverance and character? Is it vision? Is it promise? Or is it something else? Because I want you to know that I went through the phone book. And what I found is there are over 100 Christian churches in Effingham County. You know how many of them offer a service like this? About 3. One of the most successful churches in our county is First Baptist, and they offer a band in a contemporary worship setting. Thriving, lively church. Grace Community, Center Point, which just started with over 90 people. And most recently, just last week, United Methodist Church opened a new church here in Rankin. They've been in existence for 3 months. In their first service, they had over 156 people. You know why? I believe this because out of those 100 churches in Effingham County, there are so many opportunities for traditional folks to worship. But there's so very few for those of us that identify with something just a little different. Not better, not worse, but different. And I want you to hear it from my mouth. If you're over 50 in this congregation, listen, my purpose is not to chase you out of this church. My purpose is to give people under 50 someplace that they can worship and identify with the God that I know to be such a great and loving and wonderful God, and to give them a chance. Please don't feel arrogant enough to think that I'm trying to chase you out. I have no vested interest in that. Our leadership team has no interest in that. I want to be a church for young and old, black and white, yellow and red, whatever. That's the vision I have. That's the love I have for God. And I want you to know that today, the challenges that we are facing, they're making us better if you let them happen. Our purpose is not to fight it. You may have trouble at work, and you know what? God may be giving you an opportunity to find another job. You may have trouble in your marriage this morning and think that there's no chance of reconciling it, but you know what? God has another idea. And maybe it's to do a miraculous healing in your marriage, and maybe it's a way to strengthen your resolve to make sure that you are stuck in that marriage. But if you don't know any other example in life, I want to give you the example of this church. God is testing us. God is refining us. And God has given us great gifts. Great gifts in the people that serve so faithfully and give so lovingly. Will we learn? Will we leave? No doubt. Or are we just going to go back to something that's comfortable? Gracious God, I pray that your resolve would be with your people. In the video, you gave Coach Boone an insurmountable task of integrating the football team with black and white in a time when everyone was against him. Everyone was against what he stood for. And yet, through perseverance and loving relationships, it's a story of perseverance and of triumph. Oh God, give us a story in our life. Give us a story in our church. Give us a story in our jobs and in our marriages and maybe in the lives of our children. But give us a story of victory. That no matter where we end up, we know that we have stood in the presence of the holy and majestic God that loves us enough to give us his one and only Son, that whoever believes might not ever die in the face of mediocrity, but live in victory in the eternal and wonderful places. God, we trust you. And we give our hearts to you today.